Hello and welcome back. I'm Nicole, a cottage witch, and this is another round of Garden Arcana. This time, again, plants that I cannot grow on my balcony, for the most part. So, the first one is Death. I love the choice of marigolds that the Herbcrafter's Tarot went with, and the I'm terrible at fungi identification, so I'm not sure what kind of mushrooms these would be, but the mushrooms growing out of the earth and the skull in the Tarot Avatara is also very appropriate. The one I went with, though, was Willow, because it does have associations of transformation and revitalization and surrender, flexibility. It also remediates the soil. It is known as a phytoremediator, which means that it will pull petrochemicals, heavy metals, arsenic, things like that out of the soil and into itself, which then makes its bark less healthy for humans to use, but the soil healthier for everything else to grow in. And that idea of transformation and potentially death, depending on what it absorbs, struck me and has always stuck with me. It also is an ancient medicine. It's been used as an analgesic and anti-inflammatory for thousands of years in several continents, I think, certainly in Europe and North America. It reduces fever and inflammation, and a decoction is good for the gums and tonsils, or you can use it externally for sores, especially if you have any pain associated with them. The Cree have used the inner bark, the root bark, and a root decoction for fatigue in circulation. Because the inner bark has salicin, as aspirin does, they've used it as an anti-inflammatory and analgesic, but without the blood thinning or stomach irritation properties. And it's one of those things that you wouldn't want to use if you were allergic to aspirin. The Métis have used it for similar external uses, for cuts, wounds, poison ivy rash, things like that. And the Scots have also used it for aches and pains, wounds, burns, as a slight sedative, and for insomnia, actually. There are a couple of species of willow that grow near me. The weeping willow, which I love, does not, but I have seen it in BC, and it's stunning. We've got the white willow down by the river and the peach leaf willow, less commonly, but it's there and it's beautiful. And the leaves in person, less so in this picture, do have a slight peachy tint to them, which is lovely. I have not used it yet in a tea, but I have collected some branches along with some red osier dogwood that grows next to it for use in tea at some point. And I have some of the white willow bark that I got from an apothecary near me, also for use in a tea someday. The other thing that in terms of plants in the garden that death reminded me of was that my garden has just taught me that death is inevitable and life and death are cyclical in a way that is intellectually I understood before that, but until I'd actually seen the plants die and return to the soil, I hadn't experienced that a pattern of death and renewal and new growth before. And so that was fascinating, and I've learned a lot, I think, from the plants in my garden, even just in their deaths. Here's a little update from my actual balcony garden. These are the roots of the raspberry shoots that died over the winter, and I wanted to know more about what the roots look like, so they're drying out there. But that is one plant that has died. Some of these are doing really well at the moment, although this one doesn't want to stay in its own planter. It keeps trying to spread to other people's planters. The pineapple weed that I uprooted from the sidewalk hasn't died yet, but it's not really thriving yet either, so we'll see how that goes. The cleavers have died. I think they're pretty well gone. But there are other plants that are growing that I had sort of forgotten about. There's a pea shoot in amongst this raspberry somewhere, which it seems to be enjoying. Well, they both seem to be enjoying. But then there are some dead leaves that I've got to take off, so there's always some sort of combination of life and death in a garden, I find. At the moment it's more life than death, although this little cucumber is probably should have pulled some of those flowers off or something. It is not doing it all well. Plantain is though, but it's a weed, so that's not surprising. Some of the molten leaves have died, but I think it's settled into its new pot now, so I think it'll survive. And yeah, I'm enjoying my time in the balcony garden here. It's mostly alive, but then again, some of the soil that allows some of these plants to thrive is compost from last year's dead plants, so there's always a bit of both. If I ever get nasturtiums to survive, it'll be a miracle. And my calendulas need picking. There's so many. The next card is Temperance. And I do like the tea for Temperance. And I have many kinds of tea from a company that is called Tea. Camellia sinensis is the Latin name for tea. And I love tea. It's beautiful. I also do like herbal tea though. And I think both, well, Camellia sinensis has associations of moderation, tranquility, mindfulness, clarity, things like that, which align very well with Temperance. But herbal tea also brings balance. If there's a physical or mental or even emotional area that's out of balance, different plants can bring in different things that you need at any given point in your life. And to me, they bring balance in a way that makes them suitable for Temperance. These are the plants for teas I've harvested most recently. So I've got wild rose, chamomile, shrubby cinquefoil, horsetail. And then I've got a bunch of others. Some of them like bearberry I've picked myself. The birch leaves I've picked. Some like catnip. The few the white willow bark I've bought from a shop near me. Eucalyptus obviously does not grow here. Sumac I foraged in BC. Milk thistle I grew on my balcony, which might seem a strange thing to grow, but I did. Pansies and bee balm. And then, oh, and I've got chickweed over here. And then down here I've got some teas I've blended. A love and moon tea. And a tea for coughs and colds and things. And just a extra container of spearmint tea, because I can never have too much spearmint. And then in the kitchen, I've got a bunch of other things piled up. This is not wild cherry plums. This is extra rose petals. Calendula, a couple of empty vials. Oh, some elderflower, that's getting low. Hawthorn, buffalo berries, hibiscus. Obviously that I bought. It does not grow around here. The elderberries I also bought. I'd love to have an elderberry bush in my backyard eventually. Sea buckthorns and currants, which I also foraged. Horsetail, cedar, spearmint, that's from my balcony. Plantain, lamb's quarter, those are neighborhood plants. So is lemon balm, ginger tea, and dandelion I bought. All those I could grow around here. Raspberry leaf is from my balcony, and I'm out of lemon balm. I've got another box of nettle leaf on my shelf to fill that up with, and then prairie berries, which is mostly Saskatoons. So I've got quite an assortment of mostly balcony garden or foraged plants, and some store-bought when I can't grow them or find them nearby. And I use all of these in various combinations for herbal teas, depending on what I feel like I need on any given day. The final card is the Devil, well, the final card for today. And I think these are blackberries. Yeah, blackberries. Oops. That the Herbcrafter's tarot went with, which I think is suitable, although they don't grow near me, so I have been having focusing issues today for some reason. So I've gone with two other plants, actually. One that grows in my brother's backyard, which I'll insert a picture of, and one that grows around me on a lot of plants that I've seen. And those are bindweed and clematises. So bindweed has associations of entanglement, restriction, subjugation. It can be used medicinally. I have never used it medicinally. It's purgative, and apparently can be violently so. And should only be used with supervision. In Scotland, they picked it on Belcourt and wove it into a wreath to avert evil. So that's an interesting association. But I picked it and clematis for the same reason, and that is that they tend to entangle and sometimes even kill whatever they ensnare. Pardon me, it's wildfire season in Alberta, and the smoke in the air is, my lungs and sinuses are not impressed, to say the least. But anyway, back to clematises. Clematises are beautiful, but I've seen them kill willow trees down by the river. I've taken them off of poplar trees and rose plants and tansy. Many poplar trees. They seem to like growing up poplar trees. And if a poplar tree is too young, which they often are down by the river, it can't survive the strangulation of clematises. The clematis will just grow to such a degree that it basically subsumes the poplar, and the poplar will, at the very least, not be able to thrive if it does continue to live. One of the willow trees, the little white willows down by the river, has died because it was strangled by clematis, and it just wasn't tall and strong enough to withstand that. Probably wild rose would be harder to kill, at a guess, but I've still taken it off of the wild rose because the wild rose belongs in that neighborhood and the clematis does not. I expect it has escaped somebody's garden near the river. But it started to spread now all up and down the river, and sort of just takes over wherever it can, and it's very out of place there. It doesn't grow in harmony with the other plants there. It will strangle them, basically. And so I don't really think I have any plants like that on my balcony. The chickweed might be the only one that could overtake anything, or maybe mint in that regard, but they're in their own separate pots, so they'll be all right. But definitely the clematis and the bindweed in my brother's backyard will wring the life out of like a tomato plant should it find its way into your backyard. So those are my choices today. That was just a quick little one. Thank you for sticking around, and I'll see you next time.